I can record.
Cool. All right. Um, Montcom. So the main purpose of this basically is to get everyone some experience with DBF and hopefully get you guys looking at what teams you want to be a part of, what stuff like is interesting to you as part of this process. And you'll be able to see kind of all of the different parts of it, like everything that we do in this club. That way next year we can have people like, oh, get a jump on this project in structures or this thing in propulsion and so on. Yeah. So hold on. Am I done? No, I just changed the order of these slides and forgot what they were. So there we go. So this mock comp is kind of modeled off of just like a general DBF competition. Usually they have 3 flight missions and 1 ground mission. For simplicity, though, I decided to make it only 2 flight missions and 1 ground mission, just so that there wasn't as much design work. So because it is a shorter competition than the general, like basically 9-month design process that we get, or like 8-month. I don't know what it is, but we're going to be doing this in 8 weeks, so it's got to be a little bit abridged. It's basically modeled off this idea of like having urban air mobility for being able to transport supplies around a city. In particular, we're using Jenga blocks as a payload this year. And then those Jenga blocks are going to have to go inside of like shipping containers that can basically snap on or somehow quickly mount to the aircraft. Mission 1 is just a demonstration. So it's just, you got to take off and fly 3 laps in 5 minutes with no payload. And then mission 2 is going to be scored based on how many crates you can fly, how fast you can fly them, and how short you can take off. So the idea is going to basically be all sorts of like trade studies on, maybe if you want to take off faster, you've got to have a bigger wing, which increases your drag, which decreases your speed. And so you've got to take into account all of those different variables to try to pick like a design that you think is going to score well. And then all of that is going to be traded with the ground mission, which is going to be loading the payload as fast as possible. So obviously you can imagine that like having a really good ground mission score might require you to have fewer payloads, which will decrease your like mission 2 score. The last thing that there is in this this mock comp rules set is that there's a rated aircraft cost. That's basically something that AIAA often uses to just kind of make a cost against having a super big plane, or a super heavy plane, or whatever like ratio they're using. For this one, we're dividing it by the weight of the aircraft and like the empty weight of the aircraft and the battery. So just not the payload. Yeah, so the actual rules document is in the Slack. And here, let me and slideshow. Let me actually pull that up real fast. So for Preston and Andrew, you guys probably don't see by default this mock comp channel. Never mind, Becca added you to it. Very cool.
I think so.
Yeah, you're 3 minutes ahead of me. It's great. And there are 2 things in this pinned message in that channel. One is this rules PDF. And so that's going to have the full like rules that I wrote, mostly copied straight from AIAA, for this competition. And then it's also going to have this spreadsheet. And it has a couple like research projects for off-season plans, and it also has a mock comp schedule. So this is where we can like reference this schedule. Yeah, and so this kind of breaks down the phases of the DBF design process. So we always start with like a conceptual design. And basically the idea there is to get a very quick picture of like, how big's our aircraft roughly? What shape is it going to be? what kind of like maybe landing gear or like how many motor, like just like what does it look like, not how do we make it look like that. And then and the other main thing from that is like how well do we think it's going to perform off the bat. And that'll kind of guide the rest of our design process. Then we have preliminary design, where we kind of fill in some of the details for some of the bigger subsystems. So we like pick an airfoil and tail sizes and stuff like that. And then we get into a detailed design phase, where for the detailed design phase, we want to take what we have, which is basically like, what is the idea behind our aircraft? And then secondarily, like, what do some of the major systems need to do to perform adequately? And then the detailed design is designing, like actually making all of these systems. So like designing the airframe, you know, integrating and testing like propulsion systems, making mechanisms for the payload, all that stuff that's like kind of granular, picking servos, making landing gear, all that stuff is detailed design. And then normally we test and manufacture, and then, or like manufacture, then test, and then go back to the drawing board because of prototyping, do the same thing over again with a new prototype, manufacture, test, do it a couple more times, and then we have a competition aircraft. We don't have that luxury right now. And so what we're going to do for this competition is we're just going to go through like the design phase for essentially one prototype, and then make a plan for how you would want to test that to make sure it like would meet your expectations, and then write a report. We're not going to be able to like go through and actually manufacture or anything like that, obviously. So yeah. All right, yeah, any questions on that stuff, like the kind of overview stuff? Sick.
Oh wait, I had a question.
Yeah, what's
So
up?
I saw this. Well, you guys have like the 3-day week thingy. The meeting times for that, would that be changed depending on like the needs of the new members participating in the mock comp? Or is that
Yeah,
fixed then?
that can totally change. Right now, like I think it seems to work. Here, let me. Oh my God, I keep expecting double clicking to get me out of this, but it doesn't work like that. Let me check the when to meet. So,
Also, new members on the when to meet. Should we make a separate like mock comp when to meet?
I was thinking about that, but
Yeah.
yeah, we should probably do that. As it
Theoretically,
stands,
y'all are leading yourselves, kind of.
yeah,
A lot of them.
as it stands, it seems like Jack, Peter, and Vlado, who are the only like freshmen and sophomores who have filled it out so far, are available at most points in the meetings, except for you, Peter, on Saturday meetings. But we can totally re-establish these times depending on what works best for people. And in fact, I actually have a little comment on that in a second. So this is just an overview of the schedule, basically what I just went over, and who's doing their presentations and stuff. And then, yeah, as far as meetings, oh yeah, thank you, Johnny. Is that a new one for mock comp? It is. Okay, yeah, so
Yeah.
everyone fill that out who is participating in mock comp. Yeah, so yeah, scheduled meetings right now are these. The upperclassmen are always available if you have like questions to try to like schedule a one-on-one meeting. So if you guys are working on propulsion and you're looking at my code, because I was propulsion lead and wrote a bunch of code last year, and you're looking at that and you're like, I don't know what's going on here because Laird's an asshole and didn't comment things, which is very likely. I'll try my best to comment before I give you guys the code, but just like shoot me a DM and be like, hey, I need you to walk me through this, or I have a question about this. Always open for that. And then if it becomes like a good idea to do something more scheduled for office hours, we can be like, yeah, today's like propulsion office hours, and if you guys have questions to drop in, feel free. But and then yeah, so teams are going to be, I guess team is going to be encouraged. I don't know why I kept writing in plural. Is going to be encouraged to find times that like work well for you guys. So if you guys just want to like have a meeting instead of Saturday at 10 is shit, I kind of agree with that assessment. So let's move it to Saturday evening or Sunday or something like that. I don't know. So you're welcome to do that as well. And then I should have mentioned here, but we've already talked about all of these like presentations and stuff are going to be recorded. And so if you can't make like conceptual design 3, it'll be on the Cal Poly or DBF YouTube channel that we're going to make apparently.
And once that's created, there'll be that link will be sent into the most likely the mock comp channel, and a notification of when videos are up on the channel will be sent through mock comp chat as well.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so let's see. Yeah, so I actually am going to update this to, oh my God, how do you exit the slideshow? There we go. Include Preston and Andrew. The only reason I called it Team 1 is in case somehow we got like 30 people showing up today, but I did not expect that to happen. Cool. Yeah, so again, the key takeaways of this is it's much abridged. So we're just trying to get you through the phases of the design process. I am really bad at this, which is why I included this reminder, but this isn't going to be a perfect design. Don't try to like try to find the best design you can get to, but like it's also most important to just like keep going through it, and we'll get to all the different parts of it so that we can see what's going on there. Yeah, so it's most important to have a design than to have a perfect design. That's the key takeaway here. And it's true for competition too. Like even if it's not just mock comp, you gotta, especially for like prototyping and stuff. It's just important to get something out, test it, see what happens, analyze why it didn't work, rather than just like keep on analyzing the same stuff. So yeah, so the last thing, the official rules is in Slack. I already said that. If you don't have like MATLAB, that's the first thing we're going to be doing. But I think probably all of you have that. But if not, download that from the school software request. SolidWorks will be needed for the detailed design portion. So by then have SolidWorks downloaded if you don't already. And then I meant to ask Jake to fill in details on getting some sort of software for LaTeX. I don't have any recommendations for like LaTeX compilers is the word. I don't know, but
you can get an IDE for it.
Yeah. So
I have recommendations if you're curious, but
I mean, I think I just typed mine up in like VS Code like everything else. Also, it may be noted that theoretically you don't have to like do all of the things in the club. Like I certainly wouldn't be like hopping on that downloading LaTeX and like being prepped for doing that because I know that I don't care about that. So
well,
if you already know like what you want to go into,
I am roasted.
In the meetings.
Well, at least as far as LaTeX, like someone's going to need to write the report. So y'all all can't say I'm not interested in doing report stuff, because I'm certainly not writing your guys' report. So, but yeah, I mean, totally right. Like if you see one of those lectures and you're like, oh, I know I hate that already, like feel free to not, But the idea of this is to give you guys a sample of kind of all of the things that way, like with the assumption that you don't know what part of the club is specifically of interest. So if you have ideas about that, feel free to focus on those things.
We also stream MATLAB on the Amazon web server.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know as far as the latency of that. I don't know how that affects things. It shouldn't be too bad, but
right. So you can save files to like your OneDrive. I think it's the 2020 version of MATLAB. So
yeah. I mean,
that's the remote desktop thing, right? Through the university?
Yeah.
Okay, I think that works.
Yeah. If that works for you, go ahead and do that. Like, obviously, you don't have to download it if you can use it. The main thing is being able to like get access to it and use it. So, yeah. Yeah. So for today, it's just kind of brainstorming some of the like overall concepts. We'll get into actually doing a full conceptual design type of like breakdown on Thursday. But for now, kind of consider these questions. Like, what kind of plane do you want to build? I mean, I don't know the extent to which you know the different like types of planes or whatever. Jake's going to talk about that on Thursday more specifically. But if you do have ideas on that, what are some of the challenges you see in the rules? Just kind of looking at those rules, like there's some things that should probably stand out as like, or that might stand out to you as like, this is going to be a challenge later. Like if we don't start thinking about this now, then there's going to be some sort of like hang up when we can't get these things to work together. In particular, payload accommodation is something that we are always pretty bad at like considering early on. And then we have to be like, oh, how do we cram this payload in here? Or, oh, we need to completely redesign X, Y, and Z because we didn't think about how we're gonna drop our bombs or whatever the mission was for that given year. Or how we're gonna mount our radome or whatever.
Can I ask a question about this?
Yeah.
When you're saying like payload accommodation, we will know, it's similar to this format, we'll know like our challenges before we build, right? It's not like we're going there and that day of they're giving us the challenge.
Yes. So for the actual competition, yeah, they released the rules in September. The competition's in April.
Okay.
So it's like a 7-month basically window to, is that how time works? I don't know, some amount of months, long time. And that's what we're doing is we're like prototyping and designing and stuff based on the specific.
We'll have like 3 or 4 like independent aircraft that we use to like develop and see which one performs best. So yeah, that's it's like a whole year project.
Yeah. Yeah, and then the only other question to think about is like, what are the variables involved here? Like, what types of things are we going to even have as parameters to change? That's just a big question in and of itself. Like, what is this kind of space of things that we're like able to work with? And again, more detail on that stuff on Thursday, but I do want to get you guys thinking about that. Initial sketches are optional if you have like some kind of great idea right now for what to do as far as that goes. But yeah. Any other thoughts, questions about this stuff? About the rule format for this? Cool. All right. Well, that is all I've got in this slideshow. I will post these slides to the Dropbox. That is another thing. We need to make a mock-comp folder in the Dropbox, and we need to add Preston and Andrew to the Dropbox. So I will.
We could also keep a lot of the mock comp things in mock comp so that we don't have to keep track of, like if we're theoretically getting like a bunch of people that might come to some meetings and then like not continue, like we could just keep it
In the Slack?
for simplicity. Like
Yeah,
the
that's fair.
slides, at least.
Yeah, we can put the slides in the Slack. That's a good move. That's what I'll do. Yeah.
If
And
you
then I'll
hate
just-
it, theoretically you can leave, but
Theoretically, though,
Yeah.
if you actually try to leave, you'll start getting spam emails about DBF meetings. The unsubscribe link is just a link to the DBF meeting.
And then I guess I'll just pin, or actually all the files are available in the same place, so I won't pin all these messages. But there's like a files tab on the side of the Slack that we'll start to accumulate all of these. So cool. I wanted, well, I was gonna put you guys in if there were more than one team, was gonna put you guys in breakout rooms so that y'all would start kind of working on it on your own. But since there's only one team, I will just keep you guys in here and have you guys take over. What are you guys thinking based on, like, I guess what I've described so far for this competition? Like what, I don't know. Yeah.
I guess I'm kind of wondering how to optimize everything because there's 3 missions. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What, do you have any ideas on that?
I guess I was gonna ask if you, like, how you guys typically do that.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm definitely that's the main focus on Thursday for sure. I will. Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that.
I mean, do you have any ideas?
What's up, Jake?
I'm asking Jack or anyone else, like, before you get into it.
That's fair. That's
just
fair.
Any ideas whatsoever about, like, what if you just had to start building immediately? Like, what would you do?
I'm thinking of more like a. It's hard. Have you guys seen the animated like spin-off of Cars called Planes?
Yes.
Okay, do you guys know like the big gray one that they jump out of? I'm thinking something along the lines of that. I don't know if we could have like a single prop or a dual prop, something that can carry a lot, but we could also probably tailor it down to have some speed to it too.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. All those are good ideas. And again, yeah, we'll definitely talk about like single versus dual prop and stuff like that when we're going over like different possible aircraft configurations and all that.
So Andrew, that was good. If at all, if you had to try to deduce from like your intuition that that's a good kind of plane to use, what would you say it is about that makes you think it would be good? Like, even though you have no way presumably to like describe those things like analytically, what is it that just like that feels like the right kind of approach?
Yeah. You could have a pretty big payload. Depending on how wide it is, you could probably fit like side-by-side crates in. So you could probably have a giant payload with that. You could tailor the airfoil to have a high lift, which means you could get all that payload off the ground. The only thing I'm kind of concerned about is the speed, because having such a big aircraft, you're not gonna have a lot of speed. And so having, I guess if you added more propellers to a certain point, it would work to have like a couple more. Might give you some speed and maybe some more lift, but the other thing I'm not really thinking about is the ground task. So I guess if you have all that payload, you can't have a very fast loading up of the payload. So I was thinking more of like how much we could fit in for that second task.
Yeah. That's really good. That's basically what we want you to be thinking about right now is like, that's exactly right. Is if you have a plane that can carry like you could probably make a plane that carries a whole bunch of those Jenga blocks, right? But but yeah, that's going to be a sacrifice on the ground mission. One thing that I should probably have talked about a little more, so let me actually pull this up real fast, is the actual like scoring equations that we're using. So the mission 2 score is the number of crates and containers divided by the time it takes to fly 3 laps and your takeoff distance. And then the ground mission score is just the time for loading the payload. And so your total score is your flight, your like missions 1 and 2. Sorry, 1 is just if you pass, you pass. Is your mission 1 and 2 score divided by your ground mission time and your aircraft weight. So those are all the things you kind of want to consider. Like if, for example, that's kind of a topic for Thursday, but those are some of the things that, like, as far as the scoring, that you want to keep in mind as well. So.
But yeah, like the direction I was pointing Andrew in is, since obviously you have a lot of conflicting things, like if you want to carry massive payload, you add a bunch of weight and drag and whatever. A good place to start is by just getting out all of the things that you have to worry about in general, just so you can see them all. Because then if people's lists of those like conflict or something, you can make sure that you're at least starting from the same foundation of what actually matters. And then you get into the hard part of like, how are we going to balance them, which is a whole bunch of math eventually that Laird's going to teach you how to do. But having somewhere to start of like, well, we at least know that how much it weighs is going to be important, means that you don't get to the end of the whole thing and then it won't take off because it's too heavy and you're like, oh, we should have thought about that.
Yeah.
So then could you start with an aircraft with like 1 payload in it and then see what the speed of that is, and then because at a point you can't have a plane going like too fast, so you have to do some turns and stuff, so you have like a kind of a basis of like a baseline, and then you could add a little bit more payload and a little bit more, and then you could probably tailor the payload to time ratio, and find like your kind of sweet spot.
Yep, that's pretty much exactly. I mean, yeah. we've got strategies for doing it like pretty efficiently in code, going through a bunch of different combinations like that, like a bunch of different like payload sizes and stuff. That's pretty much exactly what you want to do. Is okay, well, if we have this plane with this payload, how's that going to do? Right? And then, oh, well, okay, let's do a different one. That's better. Let's do that one, right? That type of thing. And just do that a bunch of times in MATLAB. And then you have a design. By the way, I saw that Mathis just joined. How's it going?
Hello, Mathis. Thanks. Yeah, it's Matisse, by the way.
Oh, Matisse.
No worries.
Matisse. Okay.
I was about to ask if you were saying it right, so thanks for correcting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, this looks super cool. I'm interested to get started.
Cool. Yeah. I just went over kind of like the intro slides. They're in the Slack that I think Johnny just added you to.
Yeah, I was actually just looking through them right now.
Cool.
Where did you join from? Like, are you ME, Aero, what year?
I'm Aero. It was Professor Defoe who sent us an email, and then yeah, he told us about you guys. So it seemed really cool.
Awesome.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you, and thank you for correcting us. We don't want to. I get names wrong a lot, so Matisse.
No Matisse, yeah.
So the people here present today that will be participating in mock comp along with you is Preston Myers. Is that how you say your last name?
Yeah.
And then, okay, I'm going to struggle on this one, Andrew. Andrew, is it Sugamele?
Damn, that's really close. Yeah, like Sugamele. Yeah.
Okay. And then Peter Kim and Jack Browers. Did I get yours wrong, Jack?
No, you got it correct.
Okay, nice. But so you'll be in a team with them, and then there are a few other, no, not a few, probably a couple other members that aren't able to make it today.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a team effort to design the plane according to the rules for this quarter.
And are we only going to do the design, or are we going to go into the shop and actually try to make it?
Alas, we
Yeah.
can't go into the shop.
So
it's a tragedy.
Yeah, we've tried. We've requested multiple times to the university to try to get build activities approved. We've tried as many workarounds as we can this year, but unfortunately, it's looking like we won't be able to build anything physically this quarter. But our hope is that we, an old member, so an alumni from the club, developed in partnership. So it's actually two alumni. They developed a flight sim for. It wasn't initially for our club, but we have applications for it in our club that we're trying to get familiar with, and hopefully we can try to get your plane to be put into that by the end of the quarter.
Okay.
So you can see some semblance of your design and if it will work or not.
I've got an idea. Wouldn't it be hella cute if, like, how we teach everybody manufacturing in the fall would just be like, remember that thing you designed? Now we can build it. So we do expect to have access in the fall, and a lot of new members do spend usually a lot of their time manufacturing. So there will be tons of that to learn how to do in the fall. We don't have access as a club. I don't know, like, you don't have access yourself, do you, for like research or something? Okay, yeah. If anyone like has some kinds of materials at home, like if you have 3D printer, like it's definitely encouraged, like if you can build. But yeah, they haven't even given us the ability to like use our budget to like bring home materials and like work on our own. So the university is being an ass about it, but by fall it should be better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Are you guys juniors, sophomore, juniors, or are you guys seniors?
We're all third years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
You know, John.
I'm a second year.
Yeah, I'm at the continuing years.
Yeah. All me, Johnny, Becca, and Jake are 30 years, and then the rest of y'all are first and second. So
there will be one third year participating in mock comp this year, and hopefully he can, because he's gone through more of the aero classes, he can offer some guidance there as well. But the leadership here is also available for questions if/when you will have them.
yeah. All right. Yeah. So any other like thoughts on back to like design questions? Anybody else have any ideas for the kind of the direction you want to go for this thing?
I think we already have like a couple of things we could do, and we talked about how we want to like figure out exactly which variables we want to or goals we want to go for, and then I think Andrew talks about like just throwing a couple numbers together and seeing where that goes. And I think we could get started. I was just like one other thing I was hoping we would do is like look at the rule book a little bit more closely and just like understand like the measurements more. Cause like when I hear 50 feet, I'm like, oh, it's like 50 feet, but I don't know how long that is actually. So like I feel like it could help us to conceptually design if we can conceptually visualize like how much of a distance we're working with, stuff like that. I don't know. I mean, I'm down to like get like a document started and just start writing things down and see where we go from there. I don't know how everyone else is feeling. What do you guys want to do?
That could be interesting, yeah.
Yeah, we can just dive right in.
All right.
Do any of y'all mock comp goers have like a drawing tablet if somebody wanted to like lead with sketches and things? I don't know if that's the best way, you know, whoever wants to jump on that.
Does anyone have a tablet to start out?
Like I've got one, but I don't want to get in the way of y'all's brains going.
Yeah, I mean, y'all can also like do paper sketches and either hold them up or send a picture in the Slack or whatever, as well. I will also say that I would definitely recommend, like, as a group, sitting down and trying to go through the rules. And y'all can definitely use this meeting for that. I personally have to leave in 10 minutes because I have work. I love my schedule. But yeah, so I would definitely look at the rules in more closely, like Peter was saying, just because a lot of those numbers, you got to just like, oh yeah, that's like how to conceptualize what that looks like. So.
Yeah, I put the link in the chat. There's like nothing on there yet, but I don't know. Thinking we have like a section for like key take.
If y'all generally wanted to work in Google, you can also do like a shared folder and then put all your jazz in there so everyone always has access. If you wanted to do
that could work.
And then like post the link in the Slack.
The other thing that I would look at, especially for those of you who are just joining the club, is if you just want to get some idea of like what we've done this year previous to this. I believe in the Slack, and I can resend it if it's not still there. We have our report from this year, from this year's like actual competition. Don't read it like front to cover, like cover to cover. Like it's not fun, but just to get
into that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, feel free, but don't feel like you have to by any stretch. I certainly didn't read the report from freshman year.
We barely even read the report from this year, so
that's just yeah.
I mean, I did, but not all of us.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway,
it's rather dense.
It's rather dense, but just to get some feel for like the kind of things that we like are working towards. Yeah, I would look at that for sure. I mean, let's see how accessible it is from the general. Yeah, if you go to the general and then you like go to the files tab under details, it should be like one of the most recent files is the report.
What was the task for this? I don't know if you guys can see this one, but this plane.
Yeah, that's the last one. If you want like all the details, you could either find the rules for the last year's comp online, or it's kind of explained in like the beginning of like section 3 of the report. But basically the plane has a big tube in it, and you got to drag the tube behind the plane. And what was the other mission?
Oh God.
Oh wait, yeah, and you have to just fly around with the tube in there sometimes.
Yeah.
So and there's like slightly different speed goals or whatever, but the detailed version is both in the rules and in the report. You have to like explain that you understand what the goals are. So in the beginning of conceptual design, it goes through like how we understand the mission requirements.
Yeah, the second mission, so mission 2, was carrying shipping containers with the rods in them. So if we had designed, for example, 4 rods, then we would have to have 4 shipping containers, and then simulating, so they would be the same size and same weight, and then we would have to carry that and fly. I think it was as many laps, or maybe there was a time limit. I don't quite remember. And then the third mission was just carrying the sensor by itself, and we had to be able to tow it behind the plane and then pull it back into the plane at the end.
And the first mission is always just fly the plane, which is why we never mention like what you're supposed to do, because it's just fly the plane for 5 minutes and don't die.
Yeah, the assumption is if you can do the second mission, then you can, or if you can perform mission 2 and mission 3, you could perform mission 1.
Yeah, and the rules that I did this year, the way I actually did that is I multiplied mission 1 score by mission 2 score, which basically means mission 1 score doesn't matter, because if you do it, you get 1, and if you don't do it, you get 0, which just means you don't get a score if you can't fly.
Yeah, you're also not allowed to go to the second mission until you do the first mission.
Yeah.
So the first mission is almost like irrelevant from a design standpoint, because you're just worrying about whether or not it'll work in 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And that's reflected in this score. But yeah, you might notice that plane looks pretty freaking weird, as do many of our planes. But that's because the design constraints are whatever the rules say they are. So when it says something like the longer your payload, or like the longer your sensor is, the better your score, then it's like, we should make a very long, skinny sensor. Yeah. And then that ends up filling up the whole plane. But it takes a while to figure that out, because in the beginning, you're also like, well, what if we had a bunch of itty bitty tiny sensors, like as small as they allow you to make them, and then just have like 50 of them? What would that do?
Yeah.
The answer is many, many lines of code.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully, the goal of Thursday is to get you guys like a basic kind of intro to the code that we use to do that type of analysis. Certainly, I mean, it took me way longer than it should have this year, because it was my first time ever seeing it. So hoping to avoid that struggle for you guys next year and after that. But yeah, I've got to go. Again, I would encourage you guys to stay here and keep like collaborating on that Google Doc and looking through the rules and stuff. If you have questions on the rules, feel free to DM me and I will respond 4 months later, like AAA does. No, I'll let you know. Yeah, right. I'll let you know what's going on with that. Yeah. Nice to meet you guys, Preston, Andrew, and Matisse. And I will see y'all on Thursday.
Have fun with your
Hi, Laird.
shenanigans,
Thanks,
Laird.
Laird.
Yeah, Laird, thank you.
Yeah.
What would a typical budget look like on a typical year?
So budget, it depends. It depends on where the competition is being held. So the competition switches from being held in Tucson, Arizona, and Wichita, Kansas. So if it's in Wichita, the budget that we request will most likely be a higher amount, just because there is added airline and air travel cost associated with it. Where if it's in Tucson, we have the ability to rent vans, and which is usually much cheaper than air travel. But for example, the budget that we requested for next year, I think was around, oh no, I can pull it up. I think I have it on this computer.
Last year we got $5,000. I think we requested like $7,000. But we also have some funding built up. This year we think Okay, well, travel is tends to be our like biggest expense because we pay for the hotels and the travel. So that's a lot of it. But this year we want to get more into composites, and those can be pretty heckin' spendy. But an alternative to the budget is like requesting companies to like donate like on the edge of expired composites. Like I think like a Boeing and stuff donates to like Prove and things like that. So
Okay.
yeah. Why, might I ask?
Oh, I was just wondering, like, in terms of the aircraft building, like,
He
how.
just wants to know how much fat cash we have laying around.
We did buy our own heckin' laser cutter with some of the like built up funds.
Yeah.
We have like a kind of cheap ass 3D printer. Most of our materials, we try to keep it like super pretty lightweight, and that ends up being like balsa wood. So not very high cost. We're not like machining things most of the time. So yeah, like foam and wood.
Yeah, not like metal machining usually,
Okay.
which is what would cost a lot. But everything tends to be really light, and that tends to lend itself to being cheap anyway. Just because what counts as light on our C scale is like very inexpensive materials compared to like if you want something full scale to be light, you have to use like really expensive materials. So it's usually not a huge deal because
propulsion is big.
Huh? Yeah, propulsion can be a major factor, especially if Laird goes, well, you see, I really want to test like these 8 different motors, and I know we might not use any of them, but it would be such good data to have.
Yeah, good one. we reuse our motors, but yeah. Peter, are you still going ham on this?
Also, for the club in general, throughout the year, like our design pace is usually that, like in normal circumstances, that we would build like several prototypes throughout the year. So it's not like we're just one and done on the one plane and then we take it to comp, because the design can change pretty radically, and especially early on, it's usually easier to quickly get a bunch of variations out of the way and just see what works, rather than spend like 3 months trying to think about it, which is what we had to do this year, which screwed a lot of stuff up. But yeah, normally we go through a good handful of planes before we get to like the ready for comp version.
Okay.
I don't know which plane you're talking about, Andrew. I need you to put the plane.
Well, I'm talking. Oh, I'll find it on the internet.
No, I think we found it.
Okay, so other than the physics, I think these are pretty good for the missions, right? Like, the fly, and then how much can you carry versus how fast can you go and take off, and then how long does it take to load the payload. And for a final score, I have to make sure we have to include the weight, right? And it's like pretty much all the variables.
Yeah, that looks like the big stuff to me.
Okay. You want to add like it looking really good or anything like that? Okay. Where do you guys want to go from here?
Fun fact, that plane from Planes is based on the C-119 flying boxcar.
I told you. I told you wrong.
Oh, okay. I see it. Simple plane.
Yeah, I mean, I like the concept.
Also, have you guys heard of the YouTube flight test?
Yeah.
Yeah, flight test could also be another source for us because they've done so many videos on like a lot of different things. They had like there was like an airsoft one where they're shooting airsoft off planes, and there was one that were dropping bombs, so they could also be another source.
So the only mission that's kind of weird to me is like the mission 3, like how fast can it be loaded? Like, because like the other one's kind of like, oh, does your plane actually work? Like, how fast can it go? The third one's like, I guess it's mostly just up to like how we design it, so you can just like shove it in or something. Like I don't know how, like what that one seems like the least complicated to me, I think. I don't know.
You say that.
No. What I'm saying is it's not least complicated. It's just like the odd one out from the other missions. It doesn't seem as related to them.
I don't think we're trying to call it mission 2. I think that's just our ground mission is what
Right.
you mean, right? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
so
A ground mission, okay.
yeah, that's traditional for the AIAA competition. You always have like a 10-foot square loading zone, and they time you how fast you can do things and like demonstrate capabilities just on the ground. And yeah, I mean, that's not always a priority, but you could imagine like if it's like a fighter or something, or like cargo, like time is money, you know, and so like loading in that sense. But yeah, that's just part of like every year. You say it might not be significant, but your time estimates are going to be really big for like well, it was my second year, I think. We were thinking about, we had like a whole bunch of passengers, and we were thinking, depending on if we could have like a tray and have like 90 passengers in a tray, pick them up and then like slot them into the aircraft like all at once, we could go really fast, and that sets our ground mission time. But alternatively, like Q&A came out, and they were like, actually, you can't use like a mechanism like a tray or something. And so loading them in one by one, like 90 of them, totally changes your score. So it's not so much about like aircraft design, that one is, but yeah, you're gonna encounter that in the real competition.
So are we kind of leaning towards like, because that plane is kind of fat. So are we like trying to find the middle ground? Or are we trying to go fast? I mean, I kind of like the idea of going fat or big.
I think more or fewer. I think not a whole ton of cargo, but we need to have some cargo. We also have to have some speed behind it too.
Right.
So on Thursday, Laird's gonna, the plan is for Laird to like break down how you would start making those decisions more analytically, because if you do what you're doing right now, you have no idea basically if you're going the right way. But basically, so like the score is just an equation, right? So what that means is that if you vary the inputs to the equation, you can just mathematically get the output, and computers are really good at that. And so if you turn all of the scoring equations into like a maximization function, then all you have to do is like create a range of inputs, and you'll get like a range of outputs that you can compare and say where's the highest output. And that's the like overall goal of scoring analysis, because the goal is to get the highest score. And so what's still useful to do like before that is like trying to figure out what you would expect to happen. So like if you wanted to carry like 500 shipping containers or something, like what impacts would that have on the other things? And like the more you build your intuition for like what a plane with a certain design will do, the better an understanding you'll have going into the actual like technical design process, because you'll see like this result has this stuff, but it doesn't have that. So I can change that and then I'll get what I want.
Right.
So if you like, of all the things that you listed out, and you can even try to break them down farther if you want, because like speed or mission time are parameters that you that like will factor into your score, but like what affects your speed or what affects your mission time? Because when you're trying to compare, like for example, the planes plane that we have up here, like we don't really have that plane to like go measure and like like what's the thrust output and whatever. And so if we want to compare it to like a different design, we need some way of making them like more similar, like using more similar parameters than whatever the actual numbers for that plane would be. And so stuff like that's when we start using stuff like the ratio between different parameters. So like the ratio of how much lift it gets to its weight. I think that's the thing, or maybe it's wing area, but or like how much power the engines generate compared to its weight. And then those become, now it's like, okay, well, I know if I have like 500 watts per pound, which is bad, like stupid, but then 500 watts per pound on this plane is the same as 500 watts per pound on that plane. So it starts to get a little more abstract, but it makes it easier to like not have to tie yourself down to any one design in the very beginning, and just look at like for any plane whatsoever, like what do I want these parameters to be?
And you guys will give us like some like reference like numbers, right? Because like I have no idea.
Yeah. So well, I can do that in the I can find you guys some examples in the meantime, but like the point will be to get like what your design, what those numbers should be for your design. So if you were like, let's say if you only wanted a plane with like one container, what would you expect those like the various parameters that you've come up with to be? Like, would they be really high or really low or whatever? And then how would they compare if you change them?
A potential reference for like ballpark numbers, you can always look at the plane from the year before. And since AIAA posts the top 3 winning reports, you can spook on people who potentially did well in the flying. Doesn't always correlate with a good report, but you can see they say they have 20 payloads and think they fly this fast. So you might be checking things like that.
I have to go to another meeting, but it was really nice seeing meeting some of you guys, and hopefully I'll see you guys on Thursday. Yeah. Bye bye.
See you, Peter.
Bye.
I had a question on, so it says for shipping containers must have at least a 1/4 inch air gap between containers. If you're like loading them kind of within the plane, then how do you keep that air gap?
Congratulations. You have to just create it somehow. So that would mean like you can't just stack them all on top of each other because there's no air gap between them. So you would have to put a spacer or a bracket or an arm or.
I was reading that it seemed like spacers wouldn't be allowed if there was an air gap. But okay, yeah.
Yeah, it means, to clarify the rules, as what are they called? AIAA is very reluctant to ever do. Yeah, by air gap we mean it's just the shipping containers themselves that have to be separated by that distance.
That is not air.
Well,
AIAA is the worst, and they say things like that for the battery. There has to be like an air gap around the battery, so it doesn't like overheat. So that's why that I think has to be specifically air. And so I would imagine that as like you've got your like lipo cell, and then if you have like foam brackets like holding the corners or something, that gives you a little bit of offset. But yeah, they're not always very clear, and they'll use wording like that.
So we
Or,
can,
I
we
mean,
can make some sort of like tray structure that can like hold the containers before we then put the tray into the plane.
If they'll let you.
Will this
I
mock
think
competition
he's
let me?
asking, are we letting him?
We can ask Laird to release a
Yeah.
Q&A.
Oh yeah, well, so another thing that would be good practice then, which has occurred to me, is that the way that you get AIAA to answer questions about the competition is you literally have to like write up the question and then submit it in writing, and then like if you're lucky they answer it in writing when the giant doc full of everyone's questions come out. So if you do have like questions you want clarified about something that's unclear, start like listing them out, but you got to make them like really specific and concise basically, or they won't get answered.
But you want to make them specific, but also general.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
so the other teams don't know which design you're
Because
going
if you're
for.
like, so can I have like an 80-inch sensor for my twin engine plane, then the other teams can be like, oh damn, we should do that too. So you don't want to like give too much away. But if you just ask like, I don't know, like can the sensor be upside down, AIAA is gonna be like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, and not answer it.
I requested a Q&A for Laird. So if you've still got Peter's document up, you can always add another section and be like Q&A, things we want to clarify, even questions for yourself. I don't know if we have a scheduled end time for this meeting. Usually people stay as long as they stay, as long as they've got work to do before they get bored.
I guess I had another question too. So is the battery something we also have to test for, or do we like, do you guys have one that we reuse every year, or is that something we have to figure out that goes with the design we choose?
Yes, that's incorporated into Laird's duties. So propulsion usually.
Formerly Laird.
Yeah, formerly Laird. Now
Yeah.
it'll be someone else next year, but that is incorporated into the propulsion testing that they do. So they do the power analysis of what the plane will need for the specific missions, and then do some research on which batteries will be best. In our last year, the AIAA allowed the use of LiPo batteries, which usually wasn't allowed. So now we have 3 options of batteries we can use, which is LiPo, the nickel metal hydride, right? Am I saying it right?
LiPos, NIMs, and NiCads.
Yeah, if you are familiar with those.
Basically use LiPos because they're way better.
Okay.
They're much more energy dense.
There's a script that iterates through like a bunch of cells, and that's gonna have to do with like you want like a power to weight ratio and stuff that's gonna come out of your like scoring analysis code and initial performance estimates. But yeah, we can order new batteries or use what we got. Also, for MOCCOM specifically, you know, like you're not going to get all of the details maybe that we get like in a whole year of people who've gone through this before. So some things, yeah, you don't have to like go a million steps depth on everything.
In previous years, could you modify the plane during competition?
Not really. So, like, there are some things that are considered basically like my plane broke and I need to rebuild it. And there have also been limited exceptions to like you can use like a different battery for a certain mission or something, but it's pretty limited, and that might not be an actual example, but it's like something like that. And it also has to pass inspection and whatever, which they're very strict about. But in general, you have to use the same plane basically and the same like general design for all 3 missions. But if there's like a mission that's like our freshman year, the plane had to like be able to drop a bunch of Nerf footballs as bombs, and also in a different mission have like a spinning disc on top of it, like a radome. But for the bomb mission, you didn't have to carry the radome on the plane, you could remove it. And for the radome mission, you didn't have to carry the bombs. So, and like they have like, they'll define like what constitutes part of the radome or whatever. So you can usually make some small modifications between missions, like to accommodate or remove the accommodations for a payload, but like you can't change wings out. I don't think you can change like motors out. The batteries, I think, are a thing that they were like, if you're optimizing like one battery versus another battery, that's allowed, but I'm not positive on that.
From what I recall, we can, like in this previous years, they allowed a battery change between mission, I think mission 2 and mission 3, we had designed with different batteries. And then we also had different propeller for mission 2 and mission 3. So those, I know we were allowed to change between the missions, but the, like you said, the structure, the main design, or not designs, the aircraft structure has to remain constant, not including those specific payload accommodations like Jake was saying.
What made you want to change the battery in between missions?
So some batteries expel energy at different rates. Some are faster expelling energy, and we want more energy in a shorter amount of time, or we want the energy to last longer, or we want the battery to be able to hold more energy. We want a certain amount of cell count, like a certain number of cells. I'm not super knowledgeable on what batteries do, but I know from listening to a little bit of what Laird says, I'm pretty sure it's the discharge rate is why we would want a battery over another one for the different missions.
And that when you improve the like electrical performance of the battery, it usually gets heavier. So as a really easy example, there are lots of like normal RC planes that you could fly on like a 3-cell or a 4-cell. And if you fly them on a 4-cell, you'll get more thrust out of the motor, but the battery itself is going to be heavier. So you might want that trade-off in one mission if your goal is just to go as fast as possible. But you might not want it in another mission if your goal is like endurance or something and you don't need as much thrust, but you need less weight. So that's just a propulsion thing that propulsion has to figure out. But yeah, that analysis was all done along with the rest of the propulsion system, which if you're not familiar with RC planes is basically the battery, which connects to a speed controller for the motor, which then regulates the power going to the motor, which has a propeller on it because we don't use ducted fans or jets or other things, at least right now.
Were there any other questions, or you are all free to brainstorm to your heart's content between each other if you wanted, or if you have places to go. You're not barred. Not barred from leaving.
So just as a, oh wait, actually I gotta do math. finding some comparative like numbers for you guys.
Also, I was looking at the for mission 2. It says we have to. Well, your takeoff length is one of your like things that will be what you want to minimize. I was thinking if we have flaps to increase our it would increase our lift at takeoff, and we could retract the flaps to have a faster flight time, but that would also increase some of our weight because we'd have to have some yeah, we'd have to have some like a servo for controlling that and something like that.
That's correct. In general, that whole deal.
We were looking into that a little bit my second year, and we had like really big wing fences for like ground effect, I think, and then and we had like a huge ground alpha and stuff like that. We were even thinking about like vortices generators for general types of other high lift devices. So yeah, you can definitely look into all those fun things.
The plane was incredibly whack because first of all, they got rid of the weight, like the fact that weight is part of your score a lot of the time. It just wasn't. So we were like, okay, well then we can just build as big of a plane as we want. And because there was like a payload involved that was like weight dependent, we were like, well, you want to carry the most weight, then you need the biggest lift force. And what's one good way to increase your lift force? Increase your wing area. So we're like, how do we just get the biggest wing area? And we're like, okay, well, if the wing fills up the entire allowable wingspan of 5 feet, then the largest wing area is whatever fills up the entire rest of this space that the plane can be in, which is a 10-foot square box. So we're like, how about a plane that has a 5-foot wingspan and a 10-foot chord, which if anyone is familiar with planes is not how planes normally look. So our aspect ratio is 0.5. And we never built the or at least I don't think we ever built the full scale version of that, but we did build a small scale version. And
2x4 was
yeah, that sounds right. But it was we learned a lot about why planes aren't normally like that, including stuff like directional stability. Ground effect is like if you're close to the ground when your wing is generating lift, then the normal downwash and your tip vortices and all the stuff that's normally going around underneath your wing gets disrupted by the ground. And that in general has the effect of like reducing some of your drag and like kind of increasing your lift a little in a way that's a little complex, but basically it helps you fly more easily near the ground. And so we had like the extreme version of that. And so we actually wanted to like rein it in a little. And also our tip vortices were like massive because they're kind of proportional to the size of your wingtips. And so if your wingtips are like 5 feet long, 10 feet long, and only 5 feet apart, you're going to have a very large vortex on each tip. So we basically put like giant plates on the sides of the plane, like vertical plates, which we called wingtip fences, but they're like no wingtip fences you've ever seen. And then that caused its own problems. So you can come up with a really weird radical design if you want, but the consequences will be that it will behave very unexpectedly because almost all of what we assume about planes is based on the planes that exist, which are all very similar to each other in general. So it can get out of hand quickly. And like a lot of the tools and models we use are also based around relatively normal planes, which isn't always obvious, but usually they're making assumptions about stuff like that your aspect ratio is in a certain range, or that you're, at a certain speed or whatever. So that's why it's good to learn the source of how you're doing your stuff instead of just copying it from the previous years who didn't explain how it worked.
Also, I'm curious, are we only allowed to use electric, or could we use like nitro?
No, the rules so far have always explicitly limited that the only source of propulsive power can be the electric batteries. And in case anyone was wondering about this, you also can't have rotorcraft or lighter than aircraft. So sadly, no blimps and no drones.
We also can't have automation or like active stability.
Yeah,
stuff.
kind of.
So no, we cannot. It's against the rules. So
you can have some like computer in the loop stuff, but it's mostly limited to like stability basically, as opposed to like I don't even think you can have auto leveling basically. So you can use gyros in your control loop, you just can't use them to like command the intended direction of the plane. You can just kind of use them as like aids basically. I don't know. You can read the rules and it's all in there. And if it doesn't make sense, welcome to the club. Okay, so if you were wondering like what's a wing loading that a plane would have like in real life, then here are some answers. So I've found 3 different classes of aircraft, and that's going to be important to remember. But for an F-15, which is like a pretty run-of-the-mill like fighter jet that you might think of if you tried to think of one, the F-15 has a wing loading of like 73 pounds per square foot, which should mean basically nothing to you right now, but the actual definition of it is just the weight of the aircraft divided by the square foot area of the wing. But compare that to a 737, like the newest version, the MAX, has a wing loading of like 129 pounds per square foot. And these things are variable, obviously, because the weight could change if you have like more or less payload or fuel or whatever. But these are just considered a ballpark. So a bit of difference there between a fighter and an airliner. But then for like a plane that's closer to like what we might be doing, which is a Cessna 172, that has a wing loading of 14 pounds per square foot. So once you start to get into the very much slower region, because like a Cessna isn't going to exceed like 200 miles an hour basically without destroying itself. An airliner won't go supersonic, but it gets pretty close. And then like a fighter can go multiple supersonics. But yeah, your wing loading doesn't really have to be as high when your speeds are slower generally. But it can be if, for example, you want to still be super maneuverable. So I'll find one more example, but like an acrobatic plane would be well, now I got to do more math, but yeah, would presumably be higher, and that kind of matches that the Cessna's not highly maneuverable.
So what's our thrust to weight ratio? If you guys know off the top of your head, it's not really that big of a deal.
So I don't know the actual number because I'm not layered. However, since we use like propeller-driven aircraft, a good note to remember is that we use power to weight ratio instead of thrust to weight because the thrust like is dependent on the propeller, but the power is more dependent on the motor. So if we were using like jets, then we would use thrust to weight. But since we're in props, we use power to weight. It's not a huge difference. I think the actual like numerical difference is basically just dependent on the efficiency of the propeller, which is another thing that the props like group or person or whatever will figure out. But yeah, so we use power to weight, and I feel like it's normally in like the 100-ish range or something. But that could be very wrong. And I just am thinking of the raw power like on board as opposed to the power to weight. So I don't know that we ever mentioned it in last year's report because I don't think it was as relevant as it had been in the past. But if you can find like other reports or our reports from earlier years, there are some examples in there. And the way I'm finding these things, by the way, is, I mean, you can just Google it, but if there's no obvious answer, you can just calculate it yourself by like whatever the output power of the motor is or the engines, if it's thrust to weight. You just take that and well, do the weight divided by that or that divided by the weight or whatever. So you can definitely find these on your own if you're interested. And as a general rule, most of those calculations will be based on what's called the MTOW or the maximum takeoff weight, because you know that you have to fly at that weight since that's your weight that you can assume to be taking off at. And even though for like a plane that has fuel that gets used up over the flight, like a gas-powered or jet aircraft, your weight will change over the course of your flight. The safe bet is just to use your takeoff weight. So if you're looking for a weight to put into those equations, generally use MTOW.
I have to get going, but I guess before I go, I have just another question. So on Thursday, are we mostly just going to discuss what we're gonna start designing?
I
The
think Eric's got a presentation about scoring analysis. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. On a lot of the days, there will be, so today wasn't very technical, but each of us leaders want to like teach you guys our specific skills. And so I think the first one is probably going to be involving MATLAB, and Laird will probably be leading that. And so he'll take you through a technical run through, and then after the little like lectures, y'all will be working together just over the course of spring quarter to.
Okay. And Jake, I guess, well, this is off topic. This is about the flight class I had with you.
Hey, Jake, your pizza's in the oven.
I can ask him another time. It's okay. Anyways, nice to meet all of you guys, and I'll see you guys on Thursday.
nice to meet you, Matisse.
Sorry, what?
It's all right. I'll send you an email.
Okay. That's fine. I mean, anyway, I don't have to go yet. So yeah, if anyone wants to stick around and keep asking questions, that's fine. I was gonna say before I was so magnificently interrupted that I'm also supposed to be there on Thursday. I don't know when I'll get there exactly because my class doesn't end till 8, I think, and then like it's like into a quiz thing, so it's very ambiguous. But the idea is that you should be able to get an idea of what you're gonna try to start designing for by doing the scoring analysis, and then I'm going to talk about like configuration stuff and how you can actually go from I want the plane to perform like this in a broad sense to the plane is going to look something like this and have like this many wings and this many engines, and like just kind of turn it into a more an idea with some more shape to it. So that should be fun, assuming it happens, which it should have some time in there. So.
And Thursday's meeting starts at 7:10, so an hour later than this one. And I should be, or someone should be there until 9, for those that want to stay until that time. Go ahead, Andrew. What did you have?
I gotta go.
All right.
Yep, I'll see you guys on Thursday.
Yeah. Nice to meet you, Andrew. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I'm also gonna go. I need to eat dinner.
As do I, yes. All right, see you, Jack.
See you Thursday.
Yeah, I'll also see you guys Thursday. I'm gonna do some research, a lot of information thrown out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna look at it and try to come up with some like ideas or like what I think would be a good idea. So
Nice.
Yeah. Don't hesitate to throw some stuff in the Slack if you want to. If you
Okay.
do a SketchUp or something like that.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it was really great to meet you guys. Great talking to you. I'll see you guys Thursday.
Thanks for
Good to meet you,
coming.
Preston. Have a good one.
You too.
Yeah.